An anti-hero can be defined as a central character in a play, book or film who does not traditionally have heroic qualities such as courage and is admired instead for what society generally considers to be a weakness of their character. Most films have them. Some anti-heroes we love, others we love to hate. But it's the anti-heroes which we end up rooting for which can instill a negative view of the world into our heads. In this video essay, we will look at why we idolize these morally ambiguous characters, and more importantly, should we? To understand how and why this happens, we have to look at a media theory known as reception theory. Reception theory is a media theory developed by Stuart Hall of the idea that different media products have an encoded message, while it's the audience's job to decode these messages. However, because not everyone in the world will always agree with each other, these messages can be perceived into three different levels of reading. These three levels are dominant, negotiated, and oppositional. A dominant reading is when the audience views a product the intended way of the producer, while an oppositional reading is where the audience rejects the intended meaning, simultaneously creating their own meaning for it. Finally, the negotiated reading is a middle ground between the two, where the audience accepts the producer's intended meaning, but they also create their own as well. A new trend in modern day media is the idolization of certain anti-hero protagonists. The character of Patrick Bateman was one of the earliest examples of this new mindset, who frequently featured on Sigma male video edits on social media platforms, which edited the character to seem almost idolized for his actions throughout the film American Psycho. A Sigma male can be described as a highly independent and self-reliant male who values self-sufficiency over physical relationships. If you've watched the film American Psycho, this sounds familiar, right? This example of this new age personality type is identical to the character of Patrick Bateman, a character who is so self-absorbed and conscious of how others view him. We can see how people, particularly young men, may feel inclined to relate to these traits. However, when you look into the sociopathic character of Patrick Bateman, we realise he holds these traits not because he's like us, but because he's completely the opposite. Director of the film American Psycho, Mary Harron, created this monstrous character who is a direct parody of the emotionless yuppie investment bankers in 1980s America, with the intent that audiences would see this character as a parody. However, many audience members did not see the dominant reading of this character, yet they chose to see a more oppositional reading. Due to Patrick Bateman being the main character of this film, we are seeing the events of this film through his eyes. In some parts he narrates the scenes describing not what is actually happening, but his own twisted thoughts and interpretations of what is happening. This makes him an unreliable narrator, with the audience being completely unaware they are also being manipulated. This is quite noticeable in the business card scene. We can see here that as soon as Bateman receives some positive reinforcement for his business card, he appears to be happy and fulfilled. He needs to feel praised for something as subtle as a business card. The mood changes very quick, however, as the character of Van Patten displays his own business card, which also receives praise for the other men in the room. We can see the jealousy reap through Bateman's nice guy persona as he stares longingly at the business card of his colleague, analysing it and its contents. We are not seeing people interact with each other on face value. We are seeing Bateman's own interpretations and negative inputs to certain scenarios. This is a big reason why I feel like seeing Patrick Bateman as a likeable anti-hero causes a huge problem with how young men will see the world. His thoughts and mindset is not one to be inspired by. It's a satirical parody of toxic masculinity in the 21st century. Now let's talk about one of my favourite characters in all of television. The character of Frank Castle, or otherwise known as the Punisher, is a notable anti-hero who is known from Marvel shows such as The Punisher and Daredevil. Punisher started out as a villainous character created by Marvel writer Jerry Conway for the Amazing Spider-Man 129 issue from 1974. Frank Castle was written as a bloodthirsty, cold-hearted hitman who was an antagonistic character to Spider-Man. However, after 2 disappointing films, Marvel creators took the plunge into bringing this almost forgotten about character back into the 2016 show Daredevil, which portrayed Frank Castle as still the vigilante killing machine which he always was, but also showed his humanity. We later find out that the reason why Frank Castle wants to kill gang members and mafia dons is because he's on a revenge mission for the murder of his family at the hands of one of the city's crime groups. This alone already makes us empathise with this character. We understand what he's doing is not morally correct, but we can see his hunger for revenge, and can understand his justification that these criminals are scumbags who will kill other innocent people if asked to do so. In Daredevil, we have a great balance of the character of Frank Castle, because we are watching the show rooting for Matt Murdock. At times we are hoping that he gets one up on Frank Castle. We don't necessarily want the Punisher to succeed in what he wants because we are rooting for Daredevil. This changed, however, when the Punisher got his own Netflix show the year after in 2017, where he was portrayed as a rootable anti-hero protagonist who stands against the corrupt government system in the USA through his acts of vigilantism. This character rating was quite dominant, as the producers intended for this character to be an anti-government icon who displays all the corruption which surrounds law enforcement in the United States. However, the problem arose when there was an uptick of police officers in the US who started wearing Punisher patches and memorabilia in tribute to the character. This is a problem because these police officers, who can hold higher positions of power within society, completely miss the mark of the character of Frank Castle by openly supporting the morals which he holds. It got so extreme in fact that the actor of the Punisher, Jon Bernthal, came out criticising the police officers for displaying the Punisher on their uniforms. Bernthal said, "They have nothing to do with what Frank stands for or is about." All in all, it's important to remember that these characters which we see on our television screens are not real people with everlasting consequences in the real world. We can learn to appreciate the characters and what they stand for from a film standpoint, but as far as trying to become them in the real world goes, it's probably best we keep the two separate.